You guys love it when I watch the Skaven videos. I think those are some of my most popular videos, like watching the Skaven stuff that Pancreas makes. Thanks, Pancreas. People love your rat stuff. That sounds weird. Rats, rats, we are the rats.
The Skaven, a wonderful race of the worst beings possible, led by a council of somehow worse rats, and then topped off by worshipping a god that's even more the worst. Every last one of them is a monster, and out of all the ones you can say to have something resembling decent qualities, which can be counted on one hand, none of them would make the Skaven an actual good person. These quote-unquote virtuous rats might appreciate other Skaven as a tool, but not really as a being. And for most of them, the Skaven by your side isn't a comrade to appreciate and watch your back. He's a threat to be wary of, and if you can help it, shove in the line of fire. Or even better, have him killed well before you reach the front lines. There's plenty of ways to achieve this. Having him implicated in a plot to overthrow another important Skaven is a great way to get rid of your rivals, and if that or any other clever schemes fail to work, you can always just stab them. But that's hardly productive. Offing a rival only gets rid of things. It gets rid of the rival, but also any use you can wring out of them before they die. Why not use them as target practice for a new weapon? Or better yet, have him hold the weapon. At the experimental stage, it'll probably blow up and leave the living target unscathed. Or even better still, turn him into a weapon. You think that exposable infantry are the only way Skaven throw the lives of their lessers away? Buddy, that is the tip of the iceberg. The Skaven have all sorts of weapons, creations, and abominations, and all of them were the result of countless Skaven slaves dying to let them be made. So join me today as we look at some of the standout Skaven creations, be they technological, biological, or even both. Don't worry though, all of them are the ultimate human rights violation.
Yes,
but before we start the video, are you perhaps a bit hungry? If you aren't now, I'm sure you will.
No, I just had dinner. Sorry.
Be sooner or later, in which case may I introduce you to Factor, the sponsor of this video. Factor is a food delivery service that takes all the stress out of mealtime. Instead of having to walk around the grocery store wondering what you want to eat, you get chef-crafted and dietitian-approved food sent right to your front door. No worries to be had about wondering what to make, making it, and then cleaning it up. You just get delicious and healthy food delivered right to your front door. All you gotta do is put the meal in the microwave for 2 minutes, and just like that, you've got something delicious to chow down on. All of the stress of cooking, just like that, is a thing of the past. There's some great juices and smoothies you can get too, which I highly recommend. And if you'd like a touch of something extra, Factor's got you covered. You can get yourself a Gourmet Meal Plus from them as well. It's just as nutritious as the rest of what's on offer and even more delicious. It really lives up to the name gourmet. And as you can see from me eating it, I am quite a fan of these bad boys. If you too would like to make your eating experience better than ever before, I've got just the thing for you. Head to Factor75.com and use code 50Pancreas to get 50% off your first box, plus free shipping. That's Factor75.com and code 50Pancreas for half off your first box and free shipping. If you want to eat healthier and easier than ever before, you could do no better than Factor, so order some today for some quality fine dining. Now then, Go-Go Gadget Rattling Gun.
Yes, the best! It's a great name.
As with most things, we're going to work our way up to the more phenomenal ones. And in fact, we're going to start with an invention that's so low-key it doesn't necessarily harm anyone. That's right, there's a Skaven invention made without murder in mind. Still malice in mind, of course. That's a constant. The Far Squeaker, also known as the item that any images of are going
The Far Squeaker, oh my gosh. Except people could still die.
To just have to be pictures of cell phones or some shit for almost the entirety of this section, because art does not exist. The Far Squeaker is just a phone.
I'll talk to someone. I'll get some Far Squeaker art or something. Mods, add that to my growing list. Sorry, mods. Sorry, mods.
It can be big, it can be small, but it is just a phone, which if I remember correctly even had a FaceTime function in a Gotrek and Felix novel. Invented by Clan Scryer, like most things on this list, the Far Squeaker is used for instant long-distance communication over any distance of the Warhammer world. It is just a cell phone. It is of course still made with malice in mind, because if the Skaven are making long-distance phone calls, they are setting up for an invasion or some other dastardly scheme. They're not inviting each other out to dinner. No. And because it's powered by Warpstone, as all things Skaven are, it's unstable as hell. If memory serves, the one Thanquol used blew up, which was somewhat to his relief because it meant the Council of 13 was done chewing him out for being himself.
Yes, but I would also like to say Clan Scryer was trying to kill him. Still very unstable, but they were hoping it would explode and kill him.
It can also apparently communicate across the multiverse, because when the Skaven used one during the end times, they accidentally talked to the Eldar. Not the High Elves, the Eldar. The voices that replied were described as elves but alien-sounding, which is the Eldar. You have surely seen an Eldar by this point. They are just space High Elves. Although since it just said alien-sounding, it could have been the Harlequins or Dark Eldar for all we know. Apparently, if you try hard enough in fantasy, you can FaceTime Eldrad.
Oh.
Pretty much everything in this category is going to be made by Clan Scryer. First off is the humble Rattling Gun. The Rattling Gun is exactly what it sounds like. Imagine a Gatling gun, but the person at GW who designed this was probably giggling the entire time they were pitching it to everyone else with a name like that. What you do is you get one rat to hold the ammo and reload the thing, one rat to hold the gun itself and the crank, and then they point vaguely in the direction of the enemy and start firing. It can fire about 100 or so rounds a minute on average, which is actually a decent bit slower than the original Gatling gun, which based on a glance at the first page of Google, could fire about 200 to 300 rounds a minute. Given that fantasy is set in an era of pike and shot weaponry, this thing might as well be the barrel of an A10 Warthog for the amount of it's putting out. The original Gatling gun also didn't have the advantages of being able to be carried by hand, nor did it fire bullets of solidified hell energy at people, so there's also that benefit. A single Rattling gun is the sort of thing that could in theory destroy an entire platoon of another faction's standard infantry, and for once I will say this is the sort of thing that even the elves can't just deflect away from themselves. Can they deflect the first bullet? Oh yeah, sure. Swordmasters of Hoeth are cracked. Can they deflect the 99 after it is where the problem lies, to say nothing of the fact that there is never just one Rattling gun shooting at you. I mean, for a while they were sold in kits of 2, and now they're sold in kits of 3, so on the tabletop at least you were forced to contend with 2 at a minimum. In what you will notice is a running theme for everything Skaven produce, this thing is hardly the poster child for reliability. The crank might get stuck, the ammo might jam, it may just fall apart, and of course, it might blow up in the face of the rats wielding it. Warpstone is the most volatile substance in Warhammer, as is fitting for something that's solidified chaos.
I hate their hands.
The rats wielding it run the risk with every shot that the thing's gonna blow up in their faces. That being said, the Skaven who use this thing are no doubt happier than just about anyone else in a Skaven army. The risk of this thing blowing up is far better than the guaranteed death of being the first clan rat to engage the enemy in melee, and at least in 4th edition AOS, each gun fires 3d6 shots at the enemy. That means you can hang tight in the back line and fire away. It is a shame that you can't overcharge them anymore, though. That was a fun mechanic that gave the Skaven more flavor, which is presumably why it got cut. Anyone who complains about the issue of that being unbalanced can go to hell. No one plays Skaven for their competitive status. We play Skaven because funny rat guys. There are 2 main other variants of the Rattling gun, which is pattern repeated for another weapon we'll be talking about. The first is the Rattling Warp Blaster. It's a Rattling gun on a little wheeled platform pushed around by other Skaven, while one of them sits on a chair and shoots. This thing, thankfully, does still have the more Warpstone bullets ability that normal guns have had taken away from them.
That's actually, I thought he was joking. Is it more Warpstone bullets? That's actually what it's called. Incredible.
Means you can double your shots if you don't mind the possibility you'll blow up. You should be doing this at every possibility, because even if it blows up, you both doubled your firepower and had a fun time doing it. The final variant comes to us from Vermintide, where a single storm vermin...
I feel like if you play Skaven, it's the fantasy equivalent of playing orcs. You're not there to win, you're there to have a good time.
Can hold one rather than requiring 2 rats to carry it. It does far less damage than a normal Rattling gun, but as a trade-off, only 1 rat needs to hold it. That rat is more mobile, and it fires far faster. Using one of these well in versus mode can either pin an enemy team down while someone else moves into position, or if you line your shots up right, you can mulch through their health after enough time. Rattling guns are overall probably the Skaven weapon that puts the user at the least amount of risk, and they're probably, again, the happiest weapons team around. Out of all the ways a Rattling gun can break, I'd wager they have the least destructive potential ways to do so. A jammed gun doesn't always just explode in your hands.
That's true.
A jammed flamethrower is perhaps worse, given Skaven engineering. Speaking of flamethrowers, though, warp fire throwers. These are one of several weapons that came about because the Skaven really despise having to deal with dwarfs.
Gross.
A dwarf has thick armor at even the lowest of ranks, and certain units like Ironbreakers are wearing Gromroll armor, which can deflect a clan rat's rusty sword he found in the garbage with ease. But as it turns out, warp fuel can melt dwarf beams with incredible ease, and even if it doesn't, a warp fire thrower can cook an entire line of dwarf infantry inside their armor. Warp fire throwers are often used to break up defensive positioning, similar to stories of US Marines clearing out Japanese bunkers with them during the Second World War. Unlike real-life flamethrowers, however, warp fire throwers operate on Call of Duty logic. To be clear, I am no weapons expert, but as I understand it, shooting a flamethrower is like shooting a car's gas tank. Real life isn't Hollywood, so it probably isn't going to explode. Especially
No.
with a flamethrower, there's a process that needs to happen before you can shoot fire at someone. But warp fire throwers are made by the race with very lax health and safety protocols and powered by the ever-present warp stone. If an Imperial rifleman gets a lucky shot off, he can start a chain reaction across a unit of these things that leaves them all dead. Nevertheless, this is once again seen as a better option than being a melee clan rat, because at least you're distance a bit away from the enemy, burning them alive. They fail all the time and kill their operators as often as the enemy they kill, but they're so effective when they work that no one's gonna care about that. Let loose with the fires of hell and pray to the horned rat he isn't gonna find you exploding funnier than the enemy being lit on fire.
The music.
As with the Rattling Gun, there's also a one-handed variant in Vermintide, and in another similar vein, you can't overcharge it at the risk of blowing yourself up in Age of Sigmar anymore because Skaven players are oppressed. This thing in Vermintide Versus can also be a brutal killing machine, although I have to say I much prefer the Rattling Gun. The Warp Fire Thrower does more damage and can hit the entire enemy
But I feel
team
like it's
if
more
they're
prone to
grouped up,
break.
but you have to get closer to the enemy to do that. I'm playing a Skaven, man. I don't want to do that. I want the other assholes on my team to be up close and personal. All of these weapons so far have one big problem, though, and it's that they're bulky and obvious weapons that can be dealt with by taking cover. There's no disguising a Rattling Gun. It's pretty obviously a gun, even if the specifics of it might be beyond the infantryman looking at the
he's not
thing.
wrong.
Get behind a big enough dirt mound when it fires and you're good. Even a warp fire thrower can conceivably be blocked with strong enough materials. If you're behind a metal wall and some asshole fires a flamethrower at you, you're probably fine as long as you aren't in some small metal cube that'll cook you alive. Don't take cover inside the brass bowl and you're good. But you know what everyone needs to do no matter who they are or where they are?
No, don't tell me what to do. I'm gonna crawl inside whatever I feel like.
Breathe. Enter the second weapon, great for murdering dwarfs in particular, the poison globe. It's honestly the least complicated invention on this list. It's just a glass ball filled with poison gas.
You know, it's like the splash potions in Minecraft, if you guys are familiar with it, which I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are. They got them splash potions. Orb.
You throw it at the enemy, wear gas masks and protective clothing, but the poison can still kill them. Then yes, this thing is normally thrown. Isn't that the best kind of chemical weapon? The kind where you just huck it and hope the wind isn't blowing in your direction?
Right.
Because as you could expect, aside from the glass ball this thing is contained in being as fragile as, well, glass, this weapon can be defeated by a strong gust of wind. That being said, and while the clothing of a globadier is very obvious and recognizable, there's only so much that can be done if conditions favor the rat. You need to breathe. The poison globe turns the air to poison. Maybe you think you can hold your breath, but if you're in active combat, you're probably going to be huffing and puffing from the exertion. And if you think being in close quarters combat with the other Skaven means they aren't going to throw the globes at you anyway, you're a damn fool.
Nope,
and if
they
you're in
don't
an
care.
enclosed building, just forget about it. In one of the Gotrek and Felix books, a dwarf is in an outpost and hesitates to call the alarm because he knows it'll be certain death from the Skaven all around him. He does so anyway because he's a true Dowie, and then his little cutscene ends with poison filling the room, if I remember correctly. It's warp.
I'm pretty sure that's right. That's in Demon Slayer? They were getting on the Spirit of Grimney, the giant hot air balloon, and they were getting ready to leave. It was like the night before they were supposed to leave, and then the Skaven attacked.
Stone-based poison too, because of course it is, so even if you somehow survive, get ready to mutate a little bit, buddy. Since the crucial flaw of this weapon is that the range is however far some malnourished rat can throw it, the Skaven decided to come up with a way to improve upon the design. Their solution was the Poison Wind Mortar. While this is another weapons team, and therefore requires two Skaven to wield effectively, this is made up for with a far greater range and payload. A mortar can fire farther, and you can jam as many globes down the barrel as fit in it. Now naturally, this introduces the possibility of a whole lot more mechanical issues, as you would expect of firing a glass orb out of a rusty tube. While they do need to get reasonably close and the globes are fragile, as long as the Skaven globadier holding one of the globes has steady hands, it ain't that bad. The mortar, meanwhile, might blow up, or the glass might shatter in the tube, and now the rats loading it are gonna suffocate because Skaven protective equipment is shit. Or it'll totally miss.
Well, I mean, they are wearing a mask, so maybe it makes them live a couple seconds longer.
Because it's held together with hopes and dreams, and instead fire directly into to the massive clan rats in front of the weapon team. Admittedly, not a single Skaven other than the clan rats will actually care, but it's generally preferred if your weapons hit the enemy and your fellow rats at the same time. It's by no means the most complicated of weapons around, but as I said, it's one of those things that at least in lore is pretty difficult to survive a hit from. If the winds favor you, or if you have a celestial wizard to make the winds favor you, you're golden. If they don't favor you and there's no lore of Heaven's Mage around to lend a hand, you're dead. Moving on from projectile gas, we have projectile vomit. The Plague Claw catapult is the finest of Clan Pestilence engineering, which means it's a catapult made of rotten wood that fires what looks like a puddle of congealed vomit at the enemy. Supposedly it also flings warpstone, but looking at the model, this is just vomit. When it hits, it'll crush whoever the projectile lands on and infect the rest of the unit with all sorts of nasty diseases, because anything that comes from Clan Pestilence is going to weaponize the bubonic plague, like the Mongols catapulting dead bodies over the walls of cities they didn't like. There really isn't much to say about it, but I can't not mention it. It's great fun to use in Total War and tabletop, because flinging a diarrhea and vomit jungle juice bomb at your enemy is the most horrid kind of satisfying.
Okay, so
from the same modeling kit that makes this thing, you can also make the warp lightning cannon.
Where do you get the vomit, she asked? You already know. Yeah. Clan Pestilence probably takes care of that part.
Clan Scryer is a very advanced group of beings, horribly evil or not, and as such they can make some dreadfully terrifying things when they put their mind to it. This is one such thing, because in the setting where the average tech level ranges from medieval times to slightly beyond the Renaissance, this thing is an energy beam cannon. Firing a concentrated beam of warp lightning into the foe, this thing will obliterate most everything that it touches. In spite of best being used against large creatures in Total War, on the tabletop and AOS, this thing is pretty good against everything.
Yeah, I was saying, against infantry would be not bad.
Attacks can ruin the day of a whole lot of things, and you get a guaranteed extra attack if you babysit it with a Scryer hero. Doing so, granted, means it might blow up, but once again, we are Skaven players here. Take your sensitive ass back to the cities of Sigmar if a little tomfoolery is too much for you. If you think a laser cannon seems excessive, then consider that during the end times, Claw built one large enough to destroy the moon Morslieb. Just shattered it like glass. God bless that insane rat scientist. And the final scryer piece of true overkill we have is the Doomsphere. It's a nuclear bomb.
Oh, yes.
That's it. It's powered by warpstone. It's about as stable as a Skaven nuke sounds like it'd be, but it is just a nuclear bomb. One was planted under Altdorf, but it was disarmed, and in Total War you can drop them on people at your leisure if you choose Claw as your starting legendary lord.
Okay,
remember, the Skaven exist in a fantasy setting. To round us off, here's a bit of a lightning round. A Warplock Jizail is a sniper rifle. That's all you really need to know. A Warpvolt Scourger is similar to a Warp Lightning Cannon, but leans more into the lightning than the energy blast side of things. And the Warp Grinder is a big drill a weapon team of rats can use. On the downside, you have to get into melee range with it. On the upside, I've seen Gurren Lagann. God only knows what can happen if the Skaven discover how to manifest spiral energy.
Oh gosh.
But though Clan Scryer makes all sorts of wonderful technology, they're not the only ones making weapons. They're just the ones that make weapons that aren't alive. Clan Mulder has quite the impressive display of horrific things to deploy to the battlefield as well, because they are the biological division of Skaven society. What happens when you rip a person apart piece by piece? What happens when you replace the parts you ripped off with parts you ripped off in Ogre? What happens when you add warpstone to the resulting abomination? All of these questions and more Clan Mulder seek to answer, so they can find the perfect specimen to throw at people who bother them. One small thing they make use of is giant rats. Small on the scale of the atrocities committed here, of course. These things are about the size of large dogs. Their purpose is therefore largely the same as war dogs. They can be used to sniff out the enemy or jump on top of them and start biting. The Skaven can also deploy rat swarms, which are a lot less impressive individually, but when 200 rats swarm you and start nibbling on your bits, the terror will strike regardless. These things are absolutely kept in horrid conditions to make them extra vicious when it's time for battle, because even when biological augmentations aren't strictly speaking involved, these things are still horrid. There's also the wolf rat variant, which is a cross between a rat and a wolf, at least in appearance. Same general purpose as a war dog, though.
Awful.
From there, if you get a big enough rat, you get a brood horror. If a giant rat being experimented on mutates enough and eats the rest of its litter, you get one that's the size of a truck that Clan Mulder likes to use as a mount. The most famous thing they've made is easily the rat ogre, or as I blurt out when I'm getting jumped by one in Vermintide, the roger. A roger is not necessarily made by crossing an ogre with a Skaven, although that has certainly happened. Covered in stitches and bulging with muscle, they look like if Frankenstein had a theming of rats. Unrelated, but piss off, person was about to comment about how it's Frankenstein's monster. Victor Frankenstein made the monster.
He got me there. You got me there, chat. Who else noticed?
And bulging with muscle, they look like if Frankenstein had a theming of rats. Unrelated, but piss off person who's about to comment about how it's Frankenstein's monster. Victor Frankenstein made the monster, and you take your parents' last name. The monster.
No, I wasn't offended by the call out, but I was like, you could say Frankenstein had a theming of rats still works because he just themed his monster to be more like a rat, and that totally works. But it did cross my mind.
Only having the one parent, his name is therefore Frankenstein. With the strength of an ogre and rage instead of actual thought, these things are a bitch and a half to contain and transport, and even more of a bitch to fight. They're one of, if not the single most exported creation Clan Moulder has to offer, because everyone wants to throw these things at their enemies. Sometimes an enterprising Master Moulder will graft weapons and armor to the thing, and no, I don't mean suit them up, I mean bolt metal plates to them, and if they're feeling real spicy, they can make a Bonebreaker Rat Ogre. These things are often used as mounts by warlords, at least in Total War, and they're easily able to crush through entire formations of units on their own.
I like the box.
Moving up the Roger hierarchy, we have the mighty Storm Fiend. It's not always that the Skaven fight each other. They do sometimes cooperate, even if they're cooperating with the intent of either using the end product against one another or trying to take the credit for the group project all to themselves. In one such case, Clan Scryer and Moulder looked at a rat ogre one day and thought, what if it had a gun? And that is how we got Storm Fiends.
It's a great
Initial testing was a bit of a swing and a
proposition.
miss, because while rat ogres certainly don't lack for strength, they aren't the most intelligent of creatures. There's somewhere between a brick being thrown through your window and a man tweaking out on meth on the IQ scale. Attempts to make the rat ogre itself smarter, however, failed on just about every front. It either didn't work or killed the creature, which is just a worse way of not working, because now you only have a big corpse left for your efforts. Eventually, Throt the Unclean got things to a point where the beast did become smarter, but it also became less violent, which is also a complete failure.
No, you don't want that.
So, going back to the drawing board, Throt decided to graft Moulder Packmasters to the nervous system of the Proto-Storm Fiends. This did allow the creature to control weapons and gain intelligence, since they were in a really messed up way being puppeted by the Packmaster, but the Packmasters were about as happy as you'd expect with this arrangement and tended to make their grievances known rather violently. Frustrated but refusing to give up, Throt decided that if he couldn't make the rat ogre smarter, and grafting someone onto it usually resulted in an impromptu fistfight with them, he decided to just grow his own Skaven. Somehow creating his own breed of Skaven that were semi-docile with massive brains, he fused them with the rat ogres he had and awaited the results. And it worked perfectly. The rat ogre, though still intensely violent, could be briefly controlled through the mini-rat on its back. When Throt had to figure out what weapons to give it to make it noticeably more deadly, Ikit came around and proposed they work together. Initially, neither side were happy with the agreement, and Ikit only proposed it because he needed to make something good to appease his superior. But they were surprisingly great partners, as Throt and Ikit's genius in their respective fields, as well as surprising insight into each other's, saw the now completed Storm Fiends armed with the finest weaponry Clan Scryer had to offer.
That's
On the
pretty cool.
tabletop, they can be armed with poison globe launchers, warp fire throwers, and rattling guns, as well as some melee options, but in lore, anything is fair game. Grab whatever's lying around and get creative. Morality went out the window the moment we started talking about the Skaven. Who gives a shit? Stormfiends sold so quickly that Scryer and Moulder couldn't keep up with their orders no matter how quickly they tried or overcharged their buyers. The two clans made a lot of money, and the Stormfiend was introduced into the Skaven armies to wreak havoc on both the nations of the world and your gormless ass when you get jumped by one in Vermintide. And the final tier of Rat Ogre is a unique one. Grey Seer Thanquol is no mere rat. He is the greatest Skaven to ever live. He, of course, requires only the greatest of Rat Ogre to ever live for his own personal mount.
Yes.
Initially, these were largely Clan Moulder creations, but after the introduction of the Storm Fiend, we see the Bone Ripper he now rides into battle to this day. A towering monster with 4 arms and weapons on each to match its size, there's almost nothing that can defeat this thing, in theory. In practice, a Bone Ripper's life expectancy can be measured in hours. Gotrek and Felix have a habit of butchering them whenever Thanquol brings one along.
It's so funny. It's so funny every time. He's like, man, I gotta get a new one. They kill him.
Remembering correctly, Thanquol ended up eating at least one of them. But in spite of this, a Bone Ripper is to Rat Ogres and Storm Fiends what the Ultramarines are to Space Marines, and should be respected and feared as the greatest threat of all on the battlefield. Right until the 4-foot-tall death-bound hurricane that is Gotrek Garrison rolls up. Then you can safely assume it's going to die quickly. There are a couple of other creations of Clan Moulder as well. A Chimerat is a horrid fusion of a Hydra and Rat, for instance. There's also the Brew Terror from Age of Sigmar, and to be honest with you, I have no idea what I'm looking at here. It's big, it has a gun, I'm like 85% sure it's bipedal, and if I saw it lumbering at me, I'd shit myself. But nothing, perhaps not even the long and storied Bone Ripper bloodline, can hold a candle to their ultimate creation, the Hell Pit Abomination.
Yep,
See,
I knew
Clan
it.
Molder
I
is
knew it
based
was
out of
coming.
the city of Hell Pit that borders the Chaos Wastes.
Yes.
Custom crafted initially from giant burrowing worms, but also quite frequently from whatever lumps of flesh a master molder can get his hands on, these things are a sight to behold in the worst way possible. If you watch them move in Total War, you can see them struggling to just be alive. And once they get into combat, they don't so much as fight as flail all over the place and crush whatever happens to be in the way. They've got multiple heads, they're too disgusting and big to move on their own power, so they usually have wheels and engines grafted onto them, and the warpstone and chemicals pumped into them make them constantly mutate even mid-fight. They also heal like trolls, and if you kill one, there's so much crap going on with them that on the tabletop there's a 1 in 6 chance that it'll just keep going. The rule is called Too Horrible to Die, which is probably the most fitting name in all of Warhammer history. There's also the Avalanche of Flesh rule, which is just horrible mental imagery. Hell Pit Abominations as models are rather tragically small nowadays compared to how the game has progressed. If there's anything in the Skaven range that still drastically needs an update, it's these bad boys. These things in Total War can fistfight dragons. They should be at least the size of an Imperial Knight, in my opinion. Maybe they can make two versions. Keep the present one as a lesser version, and the new and improved model can be the Hell Pit Atrocity or something like that.
Okay, that is cool, but ew, no.
I hope you don't think I've forgotten about the rat cars. The Skaven have 3 vehicles that I'll be mentioning today, 2 of which are tabletop options, and the third of which is just really funny. The first is the Doomflayer.
Yep.
This is a circular little ball of knives and hatred ridden by a single Skaven designed to crash through dwarf lines. The Skaven, if you couldn't tell,
dwarves.
really don't like the dwarfs, and given that they both live underground, it only makes sense a large amount of their resources
a lot of beef,
would be
that's for
devoted
sure.
to dealing with the beard things. The blades in the middle constantly spin with the wheel, and they're overall fantastic at cutting through even heavier infantry. Not as much as yet another of Ictaclaw's inventions, though, the almighty Doom Wheel. Imagine a hamster wheel the size of a moving truck crossed with that thing General Grievous drove in Revenge of the Sith.
You had to
this
bring
thing
General
is going to run
Grievous
you down,
in.
because let's be honest with what we're looking at here, and admit that the basic principle of this thing is just vehicular homicide. Powered by a treadmill of either rats or Skaven slaves, this also empowers a warpstone battery that can shoot out bolts of lightning at the enemy. As is fitting for such an abomination, this thing is less piloted and more aimed roughly forward. These things can get stuck in the mud, spin in circles, or just fall apart, leaving the rat piloting it zooming forward at 60 miles an hour like a Looney Tunes character.
Guys, he's here! He's here in my chat! Oh no! Dude, oh man, I'm paranoid. I'm so paranoid. You guys know how long it's been since I last watched a Pancreas video? It's been a hot minute. The guillotine's over my neck. And now he's here! The chat yearned for another Pancreas video, and I was like, okay, guys. Look, I wasn't gonna make too much of a judgmental comment. They want the rats. They crave the rats. And they want you, apparently. Congratulations.
Falling off a cliff. Sometimes they just stop because the rats and or slaves running to power it get tired. And once they stop, they're not starting again. So if the enemy has been thoroughly routed, that crew is getting executed. None of this matters. They do not exist for long-term engagements. They do not exist with the rider's safety in mind. They exist to go forward, rip apart an enemy line, and then if they're lucky, fire a laser into it for good measure. And the mighty Doom Wheel is unmatched in this field as a war machine. And our last creation, the pinnacle of Skaven technology, is a piloted artificial comet. The entire Vortex campaign from Total Warhammer 2, where the twin-tailed comet shone in the sky and all the factions raced to take control of the Vortex and Ulthuan because of it. Yeah, it was just a rat they flew into space to create a fake comet. They tricked everyone from the elves to the lizardmen with Sputnik from Wish. God, I love these fucking rats. And those are the main highlights of the Skaven's creations.
Oh my gosh.
And remember, folks, just because it's alive doesn't mean it isn't a weapon. Thank you as always to my wonderful channel members. You are the warpstone to my Skaven creation, the beating malicious heart of this incompetent malicious channel. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe or become a member. Either way, thank you for watching and take care out there.
Rats, we are the rats. Michael.
On reflection of the Skaven, it's really impressive how they're basically if you took Starscream and Shockwave and merged them into one ratty being. No morals, constant hunger for power leading them to betray their superiors, mad science. It really is something special to behold.
It was a good time when the comments were just that. I'm like, oh yes, you're right. You're right, I agree with you. That's thought-provoking. The silly was unleashed in recent times, you're right. Yeah, I don't remember... See, I got lulled into like a false sense of security because before, I was watching, let's see. This one was fine, but most of these were from a while ago, and I didn't have to worry about it. And then the recent ones, it's like, wow. Guys, go follow Mr. Pancreas. Get him to, he'll get there eventually, 500k.